Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome. If I haven't met you yet, I'm Aubrey Bergauer, and this is week 9 of 10 of an ongoing series on how the narrative is changing for the arts and culture more broadly. And if you've been following along over these last few weeks, or even if you haven't, you know the pandemic has really been an agent for change in all industries, not just arts and culture. And the intersection of that with our work at arts organizations is that there is change, and that's good news. In an industry that can be reticent to change, can be slow to change, we have seen a lot of change for the better. So that's what this whole series is about. And whether you are watching live now or online later, just one more time, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you found this. And as we're getting going, thank you to LinkedIn Creator Accelerator Program, and they have made it possible to bring this to you. They're investing in the business side of the arts, and I'm just really grateful for their support in bringing this content. So today's topic is all about alternate revenue streams. And I have to say, I get asked all the time, whether through my consulting work or as people reach out individually, one-on-one, even casual conversations, I get asked all the time, Aubrey, what is an organization doing it right? You talk about change, you talk about all these things that we need to do differently in our business. Who's doing it right? And for a long time, I didn't always have an answer to that. And now I do. So the organization, when I first discovered this company and their leader, it was like jaw dropping on the floor. So today we are meeting with Zenetta Drew, the CEO of Dallas Black Dance Theater. And just to share a little bit about how I discovered them, I think I first came across Zenetta's work when she wrote an article for the Wallace Foundation. This was during the pandemic, and just talking about how we can leverage that crisis as opportunity for us. And it just really caught my attention because I believe that to be true. So put a pin in that. Let me bring her on, and I will continue with this introduction here. Welcome, Zenetta. I'm going to continue singing your praises while everybody can see you. After I found that Wallace article, it was, fast forward a year and a half, I think. And it was this fall when I heard Zenetta speaking on a panel at the Women in Classical Music Symposium hosted by the Dallas Symphony. And I started taking notes. I mean, anybody who's been at a conference, this was one of the later sessions, and it was just like it jolted me to awareness, and like everything that came out of her mouth, I was like, I got to be writing this down. Get out the laptop, start taking notes. Like that's how much Zenetta just captured my attention with everything they're doing at Dallas Black Dance Theater. So if you like making money, everybody, raise your hand if you like making money wherever you are. You should be taking notes on this conversation, just like I did. Yes, all of us, hands raised, 2 hands everywhere. Okay, so as I said, we are talking about alternate revenue streams today in terms of how the narrative is changing. This question, like I said, the pandemic accelerated so much. This question really came to the forefront, I would say, as we could not, as arts organizations, make money in our traditional ways. We could not sell tickets to in-person events. We all know this. We've lived this. Our fundraising dynamics really had to change. So that's what we're getting into today, hearing firsthand what they've done at Dallas Black Dance Theater and how it's worked. So a few things, and then I'll get going with my questions here. The first is, everybody, please use the chat. Everybody has been really great over these last few weeks of engaging. If you have questions, please ask them. I will raise those questions to Zenetta as our conversation unfolds. And or if you just like what she's hearing, you want to cheer her on, please do that too. We love seeing it. We see those comments on this end. So please make yourself known, make some noise. We definitely want to hear from you. And if you like this topic and think it would be beneficial to others in your network, please share this video, share this stream, whether live now or if you're watching online later. It's really helpful to advance this conversation on how we can be making money in different ways. So with that, just a few things I want to share about Zenetta as we dive in. She has been leading Dallas Black Dance Theater since 1987. And during that time, has grown the organization from this tiny startup dance company to a multi-million-dollar sizable institution. Their audiences, this one blows my mind, have grown from 20,000 people annually to 150,000 people annually. They are touring. They've been to 31 states. They've been to 15 countries. So just the work they're doing is so just, I don't know, awe-inspiring, I think, just the way you've grown that company. And all of that, all those stats I just cited, that was all pre-pandemic. So here we are. And like I said, her article that she wrote for Wallace Foundation talked about how there is opportunity amidst the crisis to continue to grow our brands, to continue to use the disruption we experienced to our advantage. And that is exactly what they have done. So I'll wrap up this intro by saying all these weeks of this series, as I said, we're in week 9 of 10 right now. I did not invite other arts executives. I always take inspiration from outside the arts, and I'm really grateful for the guests I was able to bring in. And this is somebody from within the arts leading an institution that I just think is crushing it in every way. So one more time, ask comments, cheer her on. And with that, let's get to it, Zenetta. My first question for you is, you have said that audience development has slowed to a near halt. Can you please talk about this? What do you mean by that? I've heard you say it a couple different times. Go for it.
Thank you, Aubrey. I really want to, say that having been in this business for 35 years, I've seen a lot with audiences. And what we have is a lot of data from RAND Report, Wallace Foundation, even the NEA, which shows that audiences are declining steadily for all genres. We don't know the reasons. We don't have any silver bullet to try to turn around the audience decline, but we do know that audience tastes are changing. There's competition with commercial and many other reasons that we can suspect. But what we have not had is any widespread way to actually change that dynamic. And so when the pandemic hit, that to me opened the eyes of how we might look differently as an opportunity for growing our audiences. But I think the thing that we really have to embrace is the fact that what we've been doing for the past 30 years has not been working as effectively as we would have liked for it to.
Mm-hmm.
And the decline will be to our detriment if we don't change directions at this point, having now suffered complete closures and now trying to redefine ourselves.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I love it. So last week in this series, different guest, we were talking about streaming. That was sort of our entrance into this topic of streaming and virtual content. And we were talking about using streaming not as a goal in and of itself, but as a way to drive engagement with our in-person product. And during that session and during the Q&A, it led to a discussion around streaming educational content in particular. And I do believe where it's hard to scale, lots of professional musicians and pay for that. Educational content is a little different in some ways in terms of paying for it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My question in all of this, there are several questions, but you've done all of the above. Any kind of streaming content, educational, performance-based, I mean, you've done it all. So first question specifically on this is, you spoke about not charging on use, but charging on access. Those were the words I wrote down that you had said. And can you explain what that means and how that played out at Dallas Black Dance Theater?
Let me give you some background first about how Dallas Black Dance Theater moved to virtual content. And we moved very quickly within a couple of days of closing and made the decision that we would only produce paid virtual content in all aspects of the business, from performances to tourings to student education programs to dance residencies. Everything that we did physically in person, we were going to mirror that with virtual content. And so the model that we came up with is we do charge for actual number of views in certain instances, but when you have large numbers of people that you're giving access to, for instance, school districts, corporations, at that point, we don't know how many people are actually going to view in the end result, but we are creating a level of access. And so, in doing our contracts with our artists and all of our royalty obligations, we realized that the greater opportunity was to charge for access for, say, 25,000 or more. If you want an example that we can talk about, one is the Dallas Independent School District. We partnered with them to offer student matinee programs. It was a groundbreaking partnership of which we offered our educational content to all 150,000 students, all grades, all schools, 230 schools. Had we been doing it in person, we'd have been able to do less than 5,000 students. We actually ended up with 62% of the 230 schools accessing the content and the virtual streaming. And we ended up with more than 25,000 students getting introduced to our programming just last month. And so we
Just last
know
month. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Okay.
so we
Please
know.
continue.
And so that particular model was built on access because we knew that when we opened the choreography up and the all of the licensing, we had to have some quantity that we could verify. And so that model was built on access. I can tell you another one was we did AARP. We've done corporations, and we've done individuals like and corporations like Verizon. They created an app for our February Black History Month programming, put it on their app, put it on their our program on their app to sell our tickets virtually. 30 million plus persons.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
And so that was a different type of product because offering simply because we would be paid by the number of views that people actually had a special code that they could come in and buy. When it comes to individuals that we sell to when we're just promoting the performances to our own patrons, we do sell it by the number of views. And we have pricing that is based on the product that we're offering. For instance, we didn't offer full performances, 2 hours of content. We offered 30 minutes. So it may be one work.
Hmm.
And so that way we were able to price it very differently than if we did our espresso nutcracker, which was a full production.
I see.
So there is a variety of ways that you can build a financial model to be able to put your product out there, but you have to look at who you're offering it to. We've had hospitals who have come in and asked for product that they could actually have. And, here's the thing, nutcracker in children's hospitals at Christmas. Unfortunately, there are going to be children there every Christmas. And
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
an opportunity for families. On the corporate partnership side, we had one company who came in and wanted to buy for their international customers. And so this was a way that they could buy virtual content, support our organization, and then have that product offering for their international customers. We have packaged it every way that we would have packaged in-person performances for revenue. And so when we look at that touring, I'm going down the list here.
Oh, go, please. Yeah.
We very early on found that performing arts centers did not have product because they brought in product to put on stage. And so they still needed to keep their patrons and their audiences. And so what we did is offered them content that they paid for, and then they streamed it to their audiences for whatever price or for free. But we got paid and we didn't have to tour. Now we can physically tour and have virtual touring going at the same time in cities that we will never travel to.
Yes.
So those are just some of the examples that we've been able to utilize. But when we want to summarize dollars, and I happen to be an accountant, so I love the money side by training. That's what I'm always looking for is how can we fund the arts? We talk about arts have value, but most times we think giving it away is going to generate the resources we need. And so we're always looking at making sure that the artists are paid and how we can grow the earned revenue opportunities for the organization. Having done that, this first year, last year we did all virtual season. 19 productions. And we were able, as small as we are, to net over six figures after all expenses for virtual.
Okay,
This year,
I just want to repeat that for everybody. Everybody who is saying we can't make money off of our virtual content netted six figures a full season. What do you say, 16 or 18?
19
19, I'm
virtual.
sorry. This is what I mean, everybody. We should be taking notes.
But what I wanted to say is
Yeah,
that
sorry to
we
interrupt.
are 6 months into our season already, and we've exceeded that into our new fiscal year. So what we see is this opportunity. We're back to in-person performances, but now we have this parallel revenue stream that is growing audiences. And I think the one thing that I have seen from many of my peers is a real concern about going back into the theaters when they opened up, and was this going to divert your local audience in person? What we found is it's actually grown it.
Mhm.
And so we've got new persons who are showing up in the theater because they saw us virtually. And that was based on one of the theories that was put in that article about how sports has grown their audiences, starting with the Dallas Cowboys. And being a Texan, I have to plug my team. But I think the thing that we learned is that when you look at their history back in the 1960s, they moved to being the team that played every Thanksgiving except for two. Nobody understood football in the 60s and early 70s, but as they used television as their digital means of expanding the product offering, suddenly you found that every community had a little league team. Everybody, including all of the wives and young ladies, have learned the sport. We've learned the game. And you created all these new entrants into having interest in actually showing up in the stadium. So 20 years later, every team was building new stadiums. Why? Because they used the digital format to be able to grow exponentially the number of people who had access to the games, who could actually learn the game, and then have an interest when they were in a certain city to go to a stadium. We have the same opportunity to do the same thing in the arts, is to create interest in communities that have no arts, live arts or professional arts or facilities. And when they come to where we are located, then we will, I believe, have to build larger theaters because we would generate new interest. Now, what does that back up to? The fact that we had no silver bullet for the past 30 years to expand the number of people who could learn about our art and get access to our art. And the pandemic opened the door for us to now reach hundreds of thousands and millions of new entrants for every um, genre of the arts.
Oh gosh, I just love everything you're saying. My mind is spinning with so many follow-up questions. So let me try to hit a few things and then I'll drill down a little bit with you. I mean, everything you just said is immediately on the heels of what we discussed in this stream last week. So we were talking about, I was quoting an NYU professor, Scott Galloway, and he talks about, you stream Fleabag on Amazon, therefore you want to buy your next toaster on Amazon. And that's what you're saying of like, that means for us as arts organizations. I literally say this, anybody who took my comeback planning sprint, almost a year ago now, I said this, that means for people watching our content online, when they come to our city, if they're not local, they're interested in what we're offering over other entertainment options available. And if they're local, it means that they either enjoy us on the couch streaming at home, or when they get off the couch, then that is also a top of mind entertainment option. So I love everything you're saying. It's playing out in real time for you there. I also love the sports analogy. I think there is so much we can learn from what sports are doing, even on very different scale and budgets. And love or hate the NFL, everything you said is factually correct, and their audience has grown tremendously. So oh my gosh, I just eat this up. Okay, so questions specifically, going back to packaging all of this every which way that you all have done, this is very tactical, but are you, just to make sure I understand, everybody watching understands, are you saying to, whether it's a corporate sponsor or the school district there, are you saying like for X thousands of views, it costs you Y dollars? Is that how you're packaging this?
Right. So
Okay.
if you come and you would like to have access for your corporate employees, and you have 1,000 employees, And many employees are remote now. So those in-person things that the arts used to do to get money, those may not exist anymore. So at
Mhm.
this point, you don't know how many of your employees are actually going to view the product, but you want to make it available to all of them. So what I have is a sliding scale that goes all the way up to over 100,000, that if you want this level of access, then you pay this amount. And that is for corporations, that's for hospitals, that's for community, or I mean, any group at a certain number of views, that's the pricing. And then when you look at other types of pricing for corporations that are buying, say, for 500 employees, and they want to buy 4 different programs, which some of them have, and bought 100 tickets, and they just selected from the menu of our season and paid the full price individually, that we were charging anywhere from $25 to $55 per view. That's what they've done, because they looked at the programming and decided that's the content they wanted to offer to certain groups of employees.
So good. Okay, so what is so interesting to me about this, well, there's so many things, but marrying this idea of the streaming virtual content with corporate giving. And we've had several questions about corporate giving in this series over the last several weeks. And as a general statement, corporate giving is on the decline in its traditional sense of it's not philanthropic. It tends to be a marketing exercise for these companies. And that shift has, we all know, anybody working in development knows it's been harder and harder to fundraise from corporations. But you've really flipped the script and have been able to monetize streaming in this way you just described for corporations. And I I don't know, it's brilliant. So questions to follow up on that are these corporations you had existing relationships with? Are you out there pitching? Are they coming to you? All of the above, if you don't mind
So
sharing.
no, the ones that we've had that have reached out, they've reached out to us. Verizon, and I'm proud to say we were excited to have them reach out, because we have not had them as a sponsor since the year 2000.
Okay.
Okay. But they reached out, and they were part of the genesis when we were looking in the 90s to do distance learning. Their predecessor, GTE, had invested $700,000 in us doing the study of how we could expand our educational programming. So that was the platform that when the pandemic hit, we were ready to move to paid um, digital distribution. However, they reached out to us with a variety of things that they wanted to do. And this is not philanthropic gifts. This is really coming out of buying product. You know, they're not asking to be seen as a corporate sponsor. They're asking to be seen. And so with AARP, and we've had out of state entities of AARP reach out to us before our Texas AARP for our product for programming. And so what
Right.
we're saying is that there are so many communities that are, and opportunities to get your product displayed. What we did is worked very strategically on who are the folks who are most likely to be susceptible to marketing for virtual. Seniors, mature audiences who are now are challenged to go into the theaters, to have a provider who they trust, bring them content, because we were not the only content that AARP uh, put forth to they created a program, a series of programs that they offered.
Yeah.
We're
Wow.
just looking at how we target, because as we said, hospitals, now you're looking at families and people that you were trying to help keep them connected. This was an opportunity. We were, uh, hospital CEO reached out to us about it. And so, as we look at the school districts now around the nation are talking about how they can do matinee programming, because they understand we have the curriculum to go with it. But at the same time, that there's students that can actually get bused, get into a facility, the time on the teachers, all of that travel time, they can create educational programs and awareness for so many more students than they can. Now, we're not saying don't have in person uh, performances or activities. What we're saying is that there's an opportunity, just like with football. If you've never been in a professional stadium, you've still had all the joys of the game.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
say that, and you've learned the sport. So there are people who can appreciate the arts and may never step into a facility. And if you monetize that, we the arts benefit. Look at PBS,
Yes.
largest digital art, and no one resists the arts on PBS. So why is there such resistance? And that's the question I had. Why is there such resistance to digitized viewing of the arts?
Yeah.
Because it's the premier station that we go to. But I think we, as the arts leaders, have been less risk taking in thinking about the having virtual and digitized distribution simply because the default has been outreach. And when we
Mhm.
look at outreach, even though we've done tons of it over the years collectively, and I have sat on numerous arts organization boards, large and small, that outreach has not turned into paid attendees.
Yes, that is right. I was just gonna say, I'm sorry to interject again, but I've got to like underscore this for everybody watching. I mean, what you're saying is so correct. And I feel like there's two big takeaways. There's probably more, but two are jumping to my mind right now. One is what you're saying. For decades, we now have the data that shows that the traditional outreach model for education, student education, childhood education, is not producing grown adults buying tickets. We know that, again, decades of seeing this play out is telling us that. Two, the other big point that I want to underscore for everybody is uh, what you've done that's so impressive to me is typically our education model is funded by foundations. You and I were just having a conversation offline about foundations, and everybody who's worked with granting organizations knows it can be challenging, and we're trying to design a project that fits the criteria, and we love those grants, absolutely. But what you've done is said, no, 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 we're not funding our education programs this way. Or not to say that you said no, we're not, but an additional funding, maybe I should say, is the revenue that's come from the way you've been able to monetize it. And this idea of monetizing education, it is a good, it's a service. um, I think it's brilliant. So I just want everybody to understand it really changes the model from how we've traditionally done it for so long.
And even with our in person performances, ours, we have not raised funds from foundations to provide free in person student programming. The districts have always paid us,
Mhm.
for doing that. So I think the thing is that what you have to do is have an investment of value. And that is where you educate students and everyone else that there is value attached with what you're receiving because you see individuals from all economic backgrounds invest in sports gear and all other types of entertainment because they desire to have it. We're trying to, in our minds at Dallas by Dead Center, is create desire so that people will want our product. And once some investment of value is made, then the tendency is that we are now bringing along those new audiences are now becoming donors. And I can say that they are not, some of them have been not small donors. So it's very exciting to see people out of state that we don't have a clue, but they saw the performances, loved it, and we've not even had to solicit them. And so
Oh,
I think
have
we,
not even had to solicit that. I mean, this is like the holy grail, I feel
right.
like. Wow. Okay, we have just a few minutes left. So everybody, if you have questions, if you have comments, please drop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. So if anybody has anything, please drop it in now. And while I'm looking for that to come through, I will just say, Zenetta, is there anything that hasn't worked as well? This is, I mean, just home run after home run after home run, but is there anything you've experimented with that you're like, I don't know?
I think the one thing that has been a challenge is for our academy. Prior to the pandemic, we had 550 students taking in person classes each week in our facility. And now, what we found is that trying to move those, which we did to all virtual classes, the younger students, ages 9 and under, their parents have been more resistant to the virtual simply because they're burnt out with the having to do school activities and learning online. And so that enrollment has declined. The older students 10 and above, we've been able to bring them along into those parents who wanted to have that virtual option. So we did not have the level of interest and participation that we had hoped, because the younger students are the ones that we thought would be more engaged. But what we are looking at now that in person is returning, there are opportunities as gas prices increase, driving, all of those things open the door for parents to have an option. So we do believe, because the schools are open again, that we will be able to grow the alternative sources of revenue for our academy. Many of our students don't live in Dallas, they live in suburbs, and many are also out of state. We've even had a 6-year-old academy student in Philadelphia and one in Los Angeles who's taking academy classes. So, what we're saying is that the numbers may be small now, but we do see the opportunity to grow over time.
Yeah, proof of concept. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing a question, and then I will ask one more to drive us home. But the question here is going back to touring. So, are you still planning on doing in-person tours? Is what I'm seeing here. Are you going all in on this virtual touring? Can you talk about sort of reconciling or not, or having both of those still exist for you all?
So, for everything that we're doing both. We are touring. We have two performing companies, and they have both been on tour out of state, I think, in the last 2 weekends consecutively. At the same time, we're also providing content to performance venues who are looking for content that they want to stream for their customers or their patrons. So at this point, we are not um, using one against the other. This is not a dual revenue stream ongoing. So our dancers may be in Maryland, but our streaming may be in Montana.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is that we don't have to physically go to places, because now all of the venues have the technology capabilities. They're now comfortable with streaming. And so they're offering a variety of products to their patrons. And we're trying to make sure that we're in that mix.
Got it. Okay. Last question, because we're over time, but last question is, you and I were talking about before the stream began, systemic change. And I just want to give you the platform as we close out to talk more about that. Systemic change is so needed. That's my whole brand. That is clearly your whole brand. It's the theme of this whole series. So with that prompt, please say more. Go.
I think this is the opportunity that we have collectively as the arts industry to be able to work toward building new audiences and to growing our audiences over the next 20 years. I don't believe it's a short term fix, but I do believe that we can expand our diversity, equity, inclusion, and access initiatives at a lower cost by using the streaming and the virtual. We also can grow audiences not just in our local community, and we can grow audiences that we never suspected we would have. So I'm looking at this, that this is the new model. It's the silver bullet we've been waiting on to help more people learn about the arts, have access to the arts, get excited about the arts, and actually experiment with different disciplines of the arts that they would not have actually invested in person, but we're now finding they're doing virtually outside of the traditional arts that they may have experienced. So overall, I would like to think that in 20 years, we as an industry would have a stronger revenue stream, and that we would have opportunities to have live concerts, and as well as every opportunity for every individual in this country to have an arts access on their device, whatever they choose. I think we owe it now to ourselves and to everyone, because the arts are for everyone and we need to make it available. And we can win.
We can win. Wow. There is nothing more I can add to that. I want to say thank you.
Thank
I
you.
love your positivity. I'm so grateful for the way you are doing these things that so many of us as an industry have talked about, and you're successfully executing this strategy. Um, Everybody, Dallas Black Dance Theater is a case study in using online content and engagement as a strategy. We talked about strategy for access, strategy to drive in-person attendance, a strategy for touring. It's brilliant and it's lucrative. So one more time, if you like making money, then this is somebody we should be paying attention to.
Thank you.
So one more time as we're closing out, I want to thank LinkedIn and the Creator Accelerator Program for making this possible. And if you like what you heard or you learned something, please leave a like, leave a comment, share this stream in your feed so others can benefit from this conversation and we can continue to push forward this type of work that we need to see more of in our industry. If you are just now finding this video, if you're watching online later, you can click the hashtag here. The narrative is changing is the hashtag in the video description. That will bring up all the past videos in this series so you can catch up, see more. And follow me if you want more like this. We have one more week left in this series as we wrap all of this up. And but I'm not stopping creating content after that. So a lot more coming your way. And with that, one more time, thank you, Zenetta. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you all next week.